Humans versus Nature. Norman Olstead and the Thai soccer team by Owen Russell. Question 1. How old was he when the plane went down? Norman was 11 years old when his plane crashed. Question 2. What was the first activity that he did with his dad? He went surfing at age 1 by sitting in a bag on his dad's back. Question 3. How far did Norman have to walk before he made it to safety? Norman had trudged through 2 miles of waist-deep snow before he made it to the cabin where he was rescued. Question 4. Where did the plane crash? The plane crashed about 50 miles from Los Angeles. Question 5. How long did Norman have to walk before he was rescued? He walked a total of 9 hours down that mountain in a mixture of walking and sledding. The plane crash killed his father and the pilot and badly wounded his father's girlfriend, Sandra Cressman, who with young Norman, was tossed violently onto the top of an 8,600-foot mountain in the freezing February weather. Norman Jr. was 11 years old. After waking up, Norman realized it was only him and his dad's girlfriend alive. He and she started to make their way down the mountain, with Norman being in charge as Sandra Cressman was badly injured on their way down. On their way down, she slipped and fell into a crevice where she died. After 9 hours of trekking down the mountain in a mixture of walking and sliding, Norman was rescued. Overall, Norman's decisions were very well-rounded and well-made. His 2 biggest decisions were when to leave the crash site and when he had to leave Sandra after she had fallen down the crevice. These were the 2 most critical decisions he had made, as they were what allowed him to survive. The second critical decision, leaving Sandra for dead, which, albeit, sounds like a horrible thing, Norman stated her eyes were open, but she couldn't talk, as he was 11 years old and she was already pretty heavily injured when she fell. This final time, he made the critical decision to leave her, as he knew that there was nothing he could do to help her. If I was in Norman's position, I would have, instead of deciding to stay under the wing of the plane, I would have looted the plane for anything that can help me, and then I would have left immediately to try to get down the mountain as fast as possible. I agree with what he did. In this trait graph chart, we see that there wasn't really any proof of easy temperament and disposition. He stayed calm and everything. He had a good ability to elicit a positive response from others when he got Sandra down the mountain. It shows off the rest, like having a sense of humor, having a sense of one's identity. His best was having the ability to act independently and to take initiative. That's definitely his strongest trait, to be independent, as he had everyone, as he had to. Everyone he was with either died in the plane or shortly thereafter, in the case of Sandra. If it wasn't for a sense of self and self-independence, he wouldn't have survived. His biggest weakness was definitely his empathy, as he stated he tried to help Sandra even though he probably should have left her. Question 1. What states were the assistant coach and 3 of the boys from? The assistant coach and 3 of the boys had no nationality. The head coach explained that they're from tribes in an area that extends across Thailand, Myanmar, Laos, and China. This region has no clear borders, and people are not assigned passports. Question 2. Who was the most used during the beginning of the rescue? In the beginning, a British diver by the name of Vern Unsworth was very necessary because he had detailed knowledge of the caves. Question 3. What was the biggest natural problem? The biggest natural problem was flooding caused by the rains, because it had been downpouring enough to fill the cave entrance, making it hard to get into. How long were the boys trapped in the cave is question 4. The boys entered the cave on June 23rd, and the last member didn't leave the cave until July 10th. Question 5. What was the mission? Was the mission without a death toll? Sadly, while the mission was a success and none of the boys died, one of the leading divers, Simon Kunan, who was 38 years old, a Navy diver who volunteered to help by bringing much-needed air, did not make it back as he ran out of air on one of his last trips out. On Saturday, 23rd of June 2018, a group of 12 boys ages 11 to 16 from a local junior football team named the Wild Boars and their 25-year-old assistant coach, Ekafon Kanthawong, went missing after setting out to explore a cave. The team was stranded in the tunnels by sudden and continuous rainfall after they had entered the cave. They had to leave some food supplies from the supposed birthday party supplies behind. When fleeing the rising water, the head coach and founder of the team had gotten a bunch of calls from parents who were worried that their kids had not come home from practice, so the coach tried calling all of the boys as well as the assistant coach to no avail, until he reached Songpon Kanthawong, a 13-year-old member of the team who had mentioned he was picked up after practice and that the rest of the boys had gone exploring the Tham Long caves. The coach raced up to the caves, finding abandoned bicycles and bags near the entrance, with water seeping out of the muddy pathway. He alerted authorities of the missing group. The boys were found, and the coach were found on a narrow rock shelf about 1,300 feet in. The ledge was found, where they were found, is about 2.5 miles from the cave mouth. Over 1,000 people from all over the world were working together to get the schoolboys out. They had been without food for 9 days before they were found. The boys were all retrieved successfully, with only one death of a diver who ran out of water on the way back after bringing the boys supplies. After 18 days, the boys were all successfully rescued, and mostly unarmed, with a few cuts and bruises here and there. Different tests were run to try and get. The biggest decision that could be found from the numerous websites and research that the soccer team themselves made was to go to the cave without telling anyone, which, while critical, may not have been the best decision, as that is what led to them getting trapped for as long as they were trapped for. Most of the major decisions were made by the rescue team, along with military leaders. While not a good decision, one of the most critical decisions was the decision made by the boys on the team. They decided to not only go into the cave without telling anyone, they decided to do it in the middle of a monsoon season, which all of the boys should have known, and the assistant coach would definitely have known that. The second of the two most critical decisions was made by the rescue team when they sent a doctor into the cave where the boys were, so they could be well fed and taken care of without overeating and overstimulating their bodies and killing them. It was also a good thing that the doctor went in there, as it gave them someone to talk to and ask questions to, as they had no other way of knowing what day it was or what was going on outside the cave. If I was a team member, I would have made sure to contact someone before we left, so that if anything happened to them, at least one person would know where we are. I think that overall the team being trapped was not the fault of a bad decision. I think that, yes, they could have saved themselves. And again, here's the trait. Easy temperament and disposition was a thing. The team managed to stay calm and caring and kind to each other and not freak out. They had a great ability to elicit positive response from others. They had empathy. They had amazing and excellent communication skills towards the end. And nothing really else. Their strongest trait was definitely their communication. While they couldn't communicate a lot or at all during the beginning when they were talking to rescue divers and people who were trying to save them, they did very well at the end when they were managed to talk to each other and keep each other calm and talk to the rescue divers who were coming and going. And even getting communication to the outside world, they managed to tell their families that they were fine and everything like that. The boys' biggest strength was also their biggest weakness. It was their biggest weakness in terms of they didn't communicate well up until the back half of their rescue. They didn't communicate where they were going. They didn't communicate what they were doing with anyone. Nobody knew where they were, what they were doing. Nobody knew how to find them. They didn't call the head coach or any of the parents to tell them what they were doing. And that was very much that's their biggest weakness, because if they had told somebody, they would have been fine. If monsoon starts coming, they disappear. At least one other person knows where they are, and they could have been gone to and faster. They could have if the prince or if the head coach had known, right, and they disappeared for a couple of days, the head coach could have been oh yeah, they went to the Tham Luang cave. I know where to go. He could go. He could see they're trapped in. He can call proper authorities faster and sooner and save everybody. But instead of that, they didn't call anybody. So that shows their biggest weakness, that they didn't communicate well until they had to be found and saved. Similarities and differences. The first of the two similarities are that both the boys from the soccer team and Norman were around the same age, with some of the boys being older than that, but only by 3 or 4 years, and obviously the assistant coach being 25 is a bit of a difference. The second similarity is, unlike Norman's experience, there were 13 people trapped in the cave, whereas Norman was alone for 90% of his journey. After Sandra had fallen down the crevice and died, he was alone. The two differences is that Norman's overall experience had a much higher death toll, with instead of 1, it was 3, which doesn't seem like a lot, but for the experience that it was, it's very high. The other difference is that the climates were very much different. Norman's was cold and wintry and wet. Well, I guess they were both wet, but not a watery wet, but icy, snow wet. Whereas the boys were damp and humid and dark, against Norman's very bright, sunny, windy, outgoing climate.